everyone. My name is Mike Rennick. I'm the senior broker, the team lead with Team Rennick Real Estate Services. This is all part of my pledge to bring you Longboat Key from the people that work here, live here, and play here. My guest today is Mr. Stephen Reed, who is the owner-publisher of the Longboat Key News and the Sarasota City News. Welcome, Steve.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing well.
How was your week?
Fantastic.
Busy week?
Busy as always.
Lots of stuff happening. It's season right now here on Longboat.
There's always things happening, even in the off season. The traffic chews up some of your time, but if you work around that, it's still the greatest place to be. We're lucky to be here. We're lucky to be here.
All right, so based on that, today, where are we?
Well, we are in the village on the very north end of Longboat Key. It's actually the old historical part of the island, originally called Long Beach Village. It's a residential community and actually has the street of Broadway. So if there's a Broadway on Longboat, here it is. That's the main thoroughfare. And we're on the edge of the property of the Vista restaurant. Vista restaurant is part of Ed Childs. You remember Lawton Childs?
Yes.
Okay, so Ed Childs is the son. He's a restaurateur.
I read that in a newspaper.
Hey, I appreciate that. And so Ed owns this restaurant. And part of the issue, and what we're going to talk about today, is there's two commercial entities in the village. There's the Shore Restaurant and Vista.
And we've shown the Shore earlier in a previous
video.
And
it's going to be opening soon. They're finishing a redevelopment of that property.
We'll have to come back when they open then.
We'll be back. Yeah, just like Hamlet's ghost, we'll be back. But the thing is with Vista, there's been an ongoing conflict in the community over parking. The Vista is constrained by the size of its property. It has had a series of expansions. Most recently, a few years ago, they were allowed to add an upper deck, which they completed. And they also expanded the footprint of their parking lot. They have about 40, they have, I think, 28 official parking spaces.
What did they have before?
I think it was closer to 18 to 20.
Okay,
so they've expanded.
Significant increase.
And they're also can double stack and valet cars, so they can get about 40 cars in their parking lot.
Okay.
But on a busy night, and this has always been the case, they have the right, because the way the town's codes work, they have the right to park in the public streets and count that as part of the parking requirement for the restaurant. The way restaurants work is you need a certain amount of parking spaces per seat.
Correct.
So in order to achieve that amount, the Vista counted up its surface parking in the parking lot. It counted up the bike rack, which they get a credit for, and they also get a credit for the numerous boat slips they have.
Okay.
That allowed them to do quite a large expansion, and the commission approved it, and the commission further allowed the parking in the street. And what happens is the residents...
In some of the street parking, we're going to show with some of the clips on this video, you'll be able to see the restaurant's not open yet. These are just employee cars right now.
Yeah, employee cars parking in the side street in front of the restaurant. On this particular street, you can only park on one side of the street, but in a lot of streets in the village, you can park on both sides of the street. And what happened is the valet is doing what valet guys and gals do, is they park the car, they run out, they get it, and they park it as close as they can run to, retrieve the car, and get it for the patron. And what happens is, during the busy season, this has happened many, many times, the villagers come to the commission and say, this is crazy. They are parking on both sides of a narrow street. If there's an emergency and we won't be able to get a fire truck through, we won't be able to get an ambulance through, and it's really a significant danger to residents. They'll say that the cars are driving fast, and they've had a few cocktails. It's a fun restaurant. They've had a few cocktails. They're driving quickly and not noticing the slow movements of the residents walking their dogs and doing their thing. And then, so you get this kind of little conflict and conundrum. So then the commission will listen and try to come up with solutions. And that's what happened last week in City Hall.
So this went back to the commission. What happened?
It went to the commission in a workshop.
Okay.
And city staff presented ideas. They said, well, we can ban parking on one side of the street.
Okay.
We could say no parking on certain streets. We could say no valet parking on streets, only self-parking. We can do a number of options. And the city commission, and then the commission had some of its own ideas.
Okay.
And the city commission they tackled this tough issue. What they said they're going to do is, well, they did the usual. They said, we want to support the restaurants, but we want to respect the residents.
Okay.
So they said, in certain streets, we're going to prohibit parking on both sides of the streets. So that should alleviate this narrowness, this constriction.
Okay.
Commissioner Ed Zunz, who lives in the village, was supportive of that idea. Then the other thing they're going to do is they're going to talk, the planning and zoning department is going to talk with Ed Childs and the valet people to see if they can come up with more efficient ways to park the cars on the lot. That I don't, personally editorializing, don't think will be that productive because they're in the business of parking cars, and valet guys know how to park cars tight. But maybe these commissioners and maybe the staff will come here and through their their expertise will help them do a better jigsaw puzzle on their property. The one issue I see that will come out of this, which is sort of an unintended consequence, is when you say you can park in the public streets, but you can't park on both sides, that's going to extend and double the footprint of the parked cars from our Vista.
So it just spreads it out.
Yeah,
you still have the same number of
now
cars.
residents who aren't currently exposed to it and are beyond the beyond the impact zone are now going to be impacted. So if you didn't like it before, you won't have 2 cars parked in front of your house, but the zone of influence will double. So I'm not sure if we really...
When does this all come back together again?
Well, they'll do what they always do. They'll do this, and then until the residents come back and say this is a nightmare, which is usually every season.
Okay.
This is high time. So they'll assuage it. They'll get through this season, I think, and then
we're
they'll evaluate.
Close, right? We're second half of March.
What I think will be prime time for problems, if anything comes of this, is when the shore opens and they have a huge busy night during season. And realize you have, part of zoning is to have compatible uses.
Yes.
And when you have a restaurant, its goal is to be as busy as it can with as many patrons as it can, as late as it can.
Correct.
The goal of these residents is to slip into bed probably by 9:30 or 10 with a cocktail on the nightstand and go off to sleep. Right, that's what a lot of them are doing, you know, or they're relaxing, reading Longboat Key News. But they definitely,
I was going to say
that's
that.
all they read, yeah, I'm sure. But at any rate, so these are incompatible uses. And if I lived in a quiet residential area, I wouldn't want to see valet guys running day and night.
Right.
So I understand their issue. Meanwhile, these restaurants have been here for decades and decades, and they're loved in the community.
But they've expanded is what the issue is.
Well, especially Mar Vista.
So the good news. So when is a good time to come back and talk about what's happening? When's
I
a
think
good
what
time
we
for an
do
update?
is we come back after shore opens, and next time what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll get a guy, I think named maybe Pete Rowan. He's head of the of Preserve Longboat Key, which is an organization that represents the village.
Okay.
Maybe we'll chat with him about how he feels this is working.
Okay.
You know, and that might be a new shit.
All right.
So,
Steve, again,
what we got?
The update.
Hot topic.
You're always on top of things
Hot
here
topic.
at Longboat Key. I appreciate that.
Thanks for your
I
time.
will see you 1 week from today.
1 week from today.
Thank you. Take
Thanks.
care.